Gaye DeRusso here with the Majestic rider with another question from a client. So, can gaited horses canter? Yes, they can canter. There is a difference between the regular trotting horses cantering and the gaited horses cantering. It's that many gaited horses have been taught not to canter because the people want to gait faster, and they believe if they teach the horses to canter, then they won't gait as fast. That is not entirely true. If you know how to teach a horse how to canter and you give it different cues to canter, it will know when it's supposed to gait and it will know when it's supposed to canter. There is a difference when you teach these horses to canter. A lot of them are older, again, because people didn't teach them to canter on purpose, so it's a little harder for them to learn, but they can learn to do it. I've taught many gaited horses to canter. Some of them it took longer than others and was a long road, but if you keep it up, they will be able to canter. The difference with them, trainers who don't know gaited horses have problems, is because they try to teach them like regular horses to canter. And the ones that trot when they're loose, these are usually easier to teach them how to canter, but the ones that pace when they're loose are harder to teach to canter. The gaited horses are a little bit more lateral, so they tend to cross-canter, which means that they canter on the wrong lead in the back and the correct lead in the front. If he's on the correct lead, it's normal these horses lose their leads on the corner, so now he's on the wrong lead behind, but the correct lead in front. It might be too fast for you, so I'll try to slow it down. Now he's on the correct lead again. So don't let that freak you out when you're looking at horses or anything. That's normal, because some of these horses are a little bit more lateral, so they'll lose that lead behind as they're going around the turns, and that's where your training comes in. And then you build up their muscles, and then they're able to hold it. So your vet's looking at your horse, wondering what they're doing. You're just on the correct lead in the front and was the wrong one in the back, which is called cross-cantering. And again, it happens more in the gaited horses because a lot of them are a lot more lateral, but that's where they get that gait. So same thing, wrong lead in the back, correct lead in the front. It's called cross-cantering. And again, you'll see them as they go around, they'll swap back and forth usually with that lead in the back. There he goes. Now he's on the correct lead in the front and back, and he swapped again quickly. It's because they're usually going too fast. When they canter slower, it's much easier for them to hold that lead, and that's why we like to teach these horses to canter nice and slow and correct lead before we have them go faster. Go boy sport. So you have to teach them to canter on the correct lead both in the front and the back, and this takes time because as they go around turns and circles, they usually lose their balance, and since they're more comfortable being lateral, they switch to the wrong lead in the back. And a lot of people think they're bucking or kicking out or doing all these things, and it's just that they're losing their balance. They need to collect themselves, shorten their stride, and learn how to carry themselves around a circle and a corner comfortably. If you just take them out and gallop them, which some people do, that's how they teach them to canter. Again, if they're on the trotty side, they might pick up the correct lead in the front and the back. But if they're more on the pacey side, then again, they usually tend to cross-canter, and you might not even know that they're cantering on the wrong lead behind, and then you teach the lead to them incorrectly, so then when they do go around corners and stuff, they lose their balance, and then they're gonna feel different or uncoordinated. So when you teach them to canter, it's best if you teach it step by step and slowly so the horse understands. If you just run them around or even run them around in a circle or too fast, the horses usually get scared and they don't know what to do with their feet, and they just throw their feet around, and they end up gaiting and pacing and trotting and cantering maybe a step here and there. But overall, they're pretty frightened and don't know what to do. So if you can teach them to canter one step by one step and then start adding all the steps together until you can get them in a circle, then over time you'll be able to get them to canter comfortably around the circle. They'll understand how to hold themselves together,
and then they'll be more comfortable on the long sides of the arena. But they really have to be balanced well before you can canter them in a straight line. They will canter up hills easier because the hill will put their weight on the back end and make it easier for them to canter. But cantering on the flat will be much harder for them until they really learn how to canter. So they might do some goofy things on the flat if you're trying to canter them with your friends. Nobody likes to hear this news, but again, to help the horse, you have to take it slowly. So if you go off and you keep galloping on the trails and you're not teaching the horse correctly, he'll never learn to canter slow correctly. You have to teach it slowly, step by step, reward and praise the horse when he does the correct thing. And over time, he'll be able to do more and more steps in a row. I recommend to a lot of people that you take the horse to a trainer when you're teaching them to canter, since they do sometimes become uncoordinated as they're learning to canter. Some of them will trip, they will fall down, they will lose their balance, and if you're also on their back throwing them off balance, again, they might fall all the way to the ground. So I usually teach them to canter in the round pen first with no one on their back. And over time, I progress to being on their back and cantering a couple steps here and there. And I don't do it very long. I'll only make a couple circles in one direction and a couple circles in the other direction. And then you always want to end it on a good note where he had a nice canter step. And then over time, you can add more and more steps. But remember, they're not quarter horses. You can't just get on and make them go faster and just think that they're going to pop into the canter like the quarter horse would or a trotting horse would. They got to understand the cue, and they have to understand the difference between the gait and the canter. And sometimes that's difficult for some of them to figure out. So with the ones that really can't understand at all, a lot of times I'll use poles or a jump, and after that they'll usually get a canter step or two. Give them a reward, stop, praise them, try it again, but again, only a couple of times in the beginning. Don't overdo it or they won't want to try it. And then also protect their legs when you're teaching them to canter, especially if you're using poles or jumps. I would recommend putting boots on them, because if the horse gets hurt while he's trying to do these things for you, then he won't want to try it again. So I hope that helps you to understand a little bit more about gaited horses and them cantering and teaching them to canter. Some of the horses, you will get them, somebody already taught them to canter, and they canter very nicely, and you can't understand why the other ones can't canter. Again, somebody taught them, took the time. Again, they were probably bred well, and it was easier for them to get the canter. But if you get a 10 or 14-year-old gaited horse and he's never learned to canter, it's going to be a lot harder for him to do it, but he can do it. It just might take months. It could take years for you to teach him to do it. But if you don't give up, over time, he will be able to canter. And again, if you're not a well-balanced rider, it's best if you send him to a trainer who can do this for you. But of all the horses I've been sent, knock on wood, I've been able to teach them all to canter. And I know many of those horses people took to other trainers that didn't understand gaited horses and told them their horse would never ever canter. And that's one of the best rewards, is when they take that horse home and show the people actually how nice their horse can canter, when everybody told them he wouldn't be able to do it at all. All right, that's the tip for the week.
Okay, so we're going to canter Cash. I don't know if he's been cantering or not, but it's not very good right now. So you'll get to see what it's like if you haven't cantered your horse or that they didn't fully get finished. Okay, so first they got to grasp the concept of the canter, which he doesn't yet. He's kind of doing a running pace, but he's trying. So I just sit on and hold the horn because it feels horrible. You don't want to fall off. Balance yourself so you don't get in their way. So try it again. I just say canter and then leg, and I'm holding the saddle. Again, this is just to get the
concept, it's not really a good canter. To get all uncoordinated. He had his lead, he popped it, and went onto the wrong lead, and then he got panicked and got really fast. And so then we just pulled him up. We're going to start again. And he pops his lead to the wrong one because they get unbalanced, and lateral is more comfortable for him, and we're trying to teach him not to canter on the wrong lead behind, not to cross canter. So try it again. Just want a couple steps. Hard part is you don't keep them organized, and sometimes they fall on their face or trip and fall down. Okay. So not great to the right. I don't know if you can see it. He needs more groundwork that way because it's a little bit dangerous up here in the saddle. So I'm just on him to show you, but this would be much better to do with the groundwork so he gets balanced, and have him cantering over jump so it gets him out of that pace and gets him lifting up his front end. So there he got actually a couple steps in a row. Didn't feel like he was going to kill me. He was somewhat safe, somewhat comfortable. So I immediately ended with that because I know he's tired. And I jumped off, loosened the girth, make a big fuss over him so he did the right thing, and then hopefully he can get back in and try it again tomorrow, because the more days in a row, the better he'll understand it. But again, right now he kind of just guessed at it, and he got the right answer, so I stopped. So it's all a guess in the beginning. So sometimes they're going to guess correctly, and sometimes they're going to guess wrong until they actually figure it out, and then they'll keep doing it correctly each time. But right now it's just a guess, and that's good enough for today. And then hopefully over the next couple of weeks it won't be a guess, and he'll actually be able to canter a little bit. But right now it's horrible, and you'll be impressed how it can be so bad to start with, and then it gets better. But you can't just run these horses around super fast trying to get that canter. You know, if they don't get it once around, if you don't stop them, they'll scramble, especially the pacey ones, and they're going to trip and fall. And either the horse is going to get hurt or you're going to get hurt. So that's why it's much better to do as much as you can on the ground and get them really balanced before you actually get on their back. Good boy. Ready? Canter. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. So he had the wrong lead behind, but he had the correct one in front.
Okay.
Ready?